From day one, Governor Mitch Daniels has made his top priority very clear.
More jobs, new jobs, hundreds of jobs.
Jobs.
The governor quickly established the Indiana Economic Development Corporation, and it got immediate results. Nestle, Honda, WellPoint, Toyota, big companies brought the state thousands of new jobs. But when it comes to Indiana job numbers, 13 Investigates discovered they don't add up.
I don't have a job to go to anymore.
Where are the jobs? Where's the reality?
And it's something the state does not want to talk about.
Why won't you reveal the information? Don't Hoosiers have a right to that?
The state's job numbers really have nothing to do with ribbon cuttings and assembly lines. When the state talks new jobs, it's talking about this. It's a detailed list showing all the companies planning to bring new jobs to Indiana. The Economic Development Corporation calls them Indiana Economic Successes. But 13 Investigates discovered many of these economic successes really aren't successes at all. They are empty cornfields and vacant factories where the state claims there are supposed to be thousands of new jobs. In Madison County, a state-of-the-art incinerator with 40 new jobs, it never came here, but it's listed as a success. 1,400 jobs never showed up at this factory in Tipton County. The state lists it as a success.
And the state says this is another success, a $2.3 million facility to build high-efficiency ignition systems. As you can see, it's just a big empty field. The project fell through, and so did the 220 jobs the state says are supposed to be here.
13 Investigates found these scenarios all over the state. Each of those red dots is one of the state's economic success stories that fell far short of expectations or simply didn't come true at all. In Bartholomew County, the state lists more than a dozen economic successes, bringing almost 1,500 new jobs. But when we visited some of those successes,
There's no workers in here. This place is shut down.
we found many of the expansion projects never happened. Columbus Components, PMG, MCON, LHP, Cummins, the state says they all added jobs. But local officials admit the reality is much different.
Those jobs never materialized.
They did not. We still have the highest unemployment we've had in years.
That's because the same companies that said they'd add 1,500 jobs in Bartholomew County actually laid off more than 2,000 workers. Workers like Gary Kirk.
It is pretty scarce for employment out there.
Gary and about 400 co-workers all lost their jobs last year at Columbus Components, just a few months after the state listed it as an economic success. Gary left behind 33 years of service, and inside that plant, he also left behind something else.
Do you remember that day that you wrote your name up on that wall?
Yes, I do. I knew the end was near. A lot of people that was their life. They'd worked there all their life. Then there was no more job there. So I don't see how they can consider that a success story.
Not every deal we announce is going to work out exactly as we planned it to work out. That's just the reality.
Mitch Robe is director of Indiana's Economic Development Corporation. We asked him about his agency's list of economic successes.
Is success maybe too strong of a word?
I don't know that we call it success. I think what you call it is, what we call it is a job commitment.
Well, I'm showing you your report right here. It says Indiana Economic Success. This is your own year-end report.
Okay.
It says Indiana Economic Successes. Should it be Indiana Economic Preliminary Commitments?
They're the first step down the path to successes.
Of course, that doesn't sound quite as good. In fact, that doesn't sound like a job at all.
We're dealing with a political agency that wants to look good and wants to make the governor look good.
Dr. Morton Marcus spent 30 years as director of the Indiana Business Research Center at Indiana University.
12 jobs, 131 jobs.
He is suspicious of the state's economic success numbers because he says they're not actual jobs, they're job commitments.
A commitment is not a reality. A commitment is a statement of hope and aspiration. That's the issue. Where are the jobs? Where's the reality as opposed to the hopes?
The reality is many commitments do lead to jobs, and some companies have actually hired more workers than originally forecast. But there's another reality. Thousands and thousands of jobs featured in state performance reports and in the governor's own campaign ads, they fell through. In fact, our investigation found 40% of jobs listed as Indiana economic successes simply haven't come, and many never will. But we don't hear about that. We just hear about this.
Cut the ribbon.
Turns out this is one time the governor does not want to discuss jobs. He declined an interview, and Mitch Robe declined to talk specifics. I asked him which companies fulfilled their job promises and which ones did not.
Can we get that list from IEDC?
That's confidential information.
They're not afraid to put company names with dreams, but we can't have company names with reality. It's not sufficient at all for the people of Indiana to be given a list of promises without being given also a list of realization. This is spectacle. This is not reality.
Following our questions, the state has for the first time released adjusted job numbers. This new report claims 13% of job commitments did not turn into actual jobs. Our research shows the real number could be 3 times that high, and the state still won't share any specifics. But it's at least a start, and hopefully the state will now be more open about real job numbers that until now have been shrouded in secrecy. I'm Bob Siegel, Channel 13 Eyewitness News.
125 jobs here, 40 jobs there, 1,400 jobs there, and another 99 jobs over here. All across Indiana, Eyewitness News discovered thousands of new jobs claimed by the state simply don't exist. And the governor is not impressed.
You know, you seem to have a blindingly clear view of what is perfectly obvious.
For weeks, the governor has declined our request to discuss Indiana job numbers. Tuesday at the State House, he finally talked. Just hours after 13 Investigate showed up to 40% of jobs promoted by the governor have not turned to reality.
You seem to have discovered the obvious, namely that a lot of these jobs were never scheduled to happen. They're never scheduled to happen in the first year. Secondly, that some of them, especially in a recession, don't happen.
Our Eyewitness News investigation did not focus on any new jobs announced during the past year. In fact, our statewide job analysis includes only jobs announced in 2006, 2007, and 2008. We looked at what the state calls Indiana economic successes to see if the projects were on track to hire new workers. That's when we discovered all these empty fields and deserted factories. They are broken commitments that state leaders still count when they talk about Indiana jobs. Those job commitments show up in the governor's performance reports and in his campaign ads, as if all of them were real jobs, when in fact they are not.
A commitment is not a reality. A commitment is a statement of hope and aspiration. We need to be founded in reality. That's the issue. Where are the jobs? Where's the reality as opposed to the hopes?
Tuesday afternoon, the governor told us almost all of the state's job commitments have turned into jobs.
We audit all the time. We're getting about 92% compliance with the or fulfillment of the jobs that are committed.
But 92% is too high, even according to the governor's own economic development director.
We believe about 87% have actually or are in the process of coming to realization.
Research by Eyewitness News shows the actual number is likely closer to 60%, a huge difference from the job statistics circulated by state leaders.
We think our numbers are right. Obviously, you think your numbers are right. Clearly, it's not 100%, and clearly, it's not 50%.
So we asked the governor to release specifics, showing which jobs have come through and which ones have not.
The IEDC board meetings are public, and plenty of enterprising reporters choose to attend them, and those figures are available there.
Again, the governor contradicted what we heard from the Economic Development Corporation just last week when we asked for the same information.
Can we get that list from IEDC?
That's confidential information.
Economic Development Director Mitch Robe says the state will not release more detailed information to back up the state's job numbers.
It seems like there's a lack of transparency when it comes to how many jobs actually came to fruition.
That's regrettable that it is not more easily tracked, but it simply isn't. And the confidentiality that we promise to companies that do business in Indiana is very important to us.
The governor is chairman of the Indiana Economic Development Corporation. He says the details we're looking for will be available at the agency's next board meeting, so we'll go to that meeting and ask again. In the meantime, the governor says in a recession, a lot of businesses have to change their plans. Clearly, that's happened. The question now, will the state's future job numbers actually reflect that? I'm Bob Siegel, Channel 13 Eyewitness News.
If you don't see any workers in this factory, that's because there aren't any. No new jobs there, or here, or over there. All across Indiana, 13 Investigates found abandoned factories and empty cornfields where state leaders claim there's supposed to be tens of thousands of new jobs. The truth is, the jobs never came, but the state still counts them on its annual list of economic success stories.
We must move from this announcement to the next one and the next one.
The governor is not shy when it comes to announcing new jobs, but when it comes to which companies actually followed through and the state's real job numbers, we found the governor didn't want to talk about that at all.
The IEDC board meetings are public, and plenty of enterprising reporters choose to attend them, and those figures are available there.
We took the governor's advice. 13 Investigates went to the very next meeting of the Indiana Economic Development Corporation. We saw lots of charts and graphs, but nothing to show which companies made good on their promises and which ones backed out. So we asked the governor for that information again, and this time he simply walked out the door. The reality is the governor and IEDC will not release Indiana's detailed job numbers to anyone. The state uses your tax dollars to attract new jobs, but you do not get to see what you're paying for.
We don't share it with the public. We don't share it with the news media. That's confidential information.
But what Indiana keeps confidential, other states make very public. If you were to live in Cleveland or Chicago or even Little Madison, Minnesota,
we're cooking lutefisk. Can you smell it?
You would live in a state where economic development information is available to everyone.
We think it's just good public policy and frankly, just common sense.
Warren Ribley runs Illinois' Economic Development Agency, and that agency puts corporate job information right online. New jobs promised, new jobs delivered. How many are full-time, part-time, and temp? Starting dates, salaries, payroll. If an Illinois company gets state money, it must report this information every year, and it all becomes public.
Do taxpayers deserve that?
I think they do. We're using their hard-earned funds. We owe that level of accountability back to the taxpayers.
The director of IEDC sees it very differently.
Why won't you reveal the information? Don't Hoosiers have a right to that?
People in Indiana, the businesses in Indiana feel very strongly that their relationship with state government is between state government and that company.
Getting information about those relationships is difficult. Even the most basic public records from IEDC can take weeks or even months to get. And when 13 Investigates finally did get the records we asked for, take a look. Basic information about jobs and salaries is crossed out.
That's not a mistake.
I don't understand why this information is kept so secret.
That is a competitive weapon that companies believe can be used against them by their competitors.
Other states believe that's simply not true.
Doesn't your agency cross out lots of information?
No, we don't.
Why?
That should be made available to the public because the public is paying the bill.
Could you understand why someone might think these are trade secrets we can't possibly release?
I don't understand that philosophy, particularly if a state is using public funds, state tax dollars. We need to hold them accountable to make sure they do create those jobs.
What else would they say? We compete with them and beat them each and every day.
IEDC says keeping corporate information confidential gives Indiana a big advantage over other states in attracting new business.
We do not intend to unilaterally disarm the competitive advantage that the Indiana Economic Development Corporation has.
But is withholding information from taxpayers really giving Indiana a competitive advantage? During the past 3 years, Indiana attracted 518 new corporate facilities and expansions. Illinois, Michigan, and Ohio, they all got a lot more than that. Those states give out detailed corporate job numbers and salary information, while Indiana does not.
If they haven't given you numbers, that means they're either bad or they don't have them.
Tad DeHaven knows all about government accountability. He used to work for the Daniels administration as a deputy director of government efficiency and financial planning. It was his job to examine statistics coming from state agencies like IEDC.
IEDC was one of those programs that we consistently laughed at because we knew that their numbers were, wave the magic wand and poof, up they come.
You didn't really believe the numbers coming out of IEDC?
No, nobody in their right mind would have believed the numbers coming out of IEDC because these state agencies would just submit us whatever numbers they wanted to. Real, fake, who knew?
So who does check to make sure IEDC is putting out accurate numbers?
4,400 jobs.
Well, that would be IEDC. The agency says its staff and board members carefully review information submitted by Indiana businesses, but not out here in public, of course. They do that behind closed doors, where you are not allowed to see what they do and how they do it.
It's something that we feel very strongly is not a matter of public record.
All of it should be public. The public has a right to know because it's the public's money. There's no corporate secrets here. There's just not wanting to tell the public what's really going on.
For 3 months, we've been asking the governor to meet with 13 Investigates to discuss his job numbers. He's chosen not to. The director of IEDC says it is regrettable that Indiana cannot be more open about jobs, but he says that's the law. Following our investigation, some state lawmakers say they want to change that law so Indiana has the same kind of corporate accountability as our neighbors. I'm Bob Siegel, Channel 13, Eyewitness News.
So you can create jobs without secrecy.
House Speaker Pat Bauer met with reporters Wednesday to say he wants more from the state's Economic Development Corporation. Earlier this month, Bauer asked the agency to explain its job creation efforts, and the agency sent a lengthy response.
I think it's good they showed something. I mean, it's a start.
But Bauer says overall he is not impressed with information provided by IEDC. He says the data provided is incomplete, and it doesn't show which economic development programs are really paying off.
So first of all, we need truthfulness. And secondly, we need to be able in the legislature to judge whether these programs are working or not. Just tell the truth. Don't give a spin.
Bauer now wants more answers after 13 Investigates showed IEDC has been inflating state job numbers by continuing to count jobs that never came. Across the state, Eyewitness News found shutdown factories and empty cornfields where the state claims there are supposed to be tens of thousands of new jobs. IEDC did not begin to report on broken job commitments like these until after it was questioned by Eyewitness News. And even then, the revised job numbers given to WTHR and to the House Speaker, they include thousands of jobs that have fallen through. Bauer wants IEDC to clean up its numbers.
You better correct that for the record, that you didn't do that. And not give false hope to the people of this state.
Republican Senator Luke Kenley says the criticism is unjustified.
I think it's important that we recognize how well Indiana's doing.
Kenley pointed to a report stating in the past few months, Indiana has been among the nation's leaders in creating new jobs. But he says transparency is important, and he supports more of that from IEDC.
Anytime that we can do a better job to provide more information for the public, which is accurate, that we ought to continue to work on that path.
The House Speaker has delivered a new list of questions to IEDC. Among them, he wants to know why the agency's revised job numbers are vastly different from those reported during our 6-month investigation. Bauer says if the agency does not provide more transparency, he believes the next step will be a state law that requires it. I'm Bob Siegel, Channel 13 Eyewitness News. As state leaders cut ribbon after ribbon, announcing job after job, they've compiled an impressive list of projects they say have brought 100,000 new jobs to Indiana.
They're not around here, so where are they?
Kerry Hall doesn't believe the state's job numbers. His job in Austin, Indiana, disappeared 18 months ago, and Kerry's been trying to find work ever since.
You just take it one day at a time.
Kerry's wife lost her job too, and now paying the bills and feeding their 5 children is a real struggle.
It's rough. I mean, it's just not us, it's everybody. Not more than a month ago, the only grocery store that we had in this town closed down. Just having to choose between a gallon of milk and a gallon of gas is getting pretty rough, and we just don't know where to turn anymore and what to do.
That's why Kerry says the state's bold job numbers don't add up. And House Speaker Pat Bauer, he's skeptical too.
It was pretty obvious that these numbers are bogus.
Bauer says he knew his suspicions were right when he saw this. 13 Investigates exposed abandoned factories and empty cornfields where the state claimed tens of thousands of Hoosiers are supposed to be working. The Eyewitness News investigation showed Indiana's Economic Development Corporation has been inflating job numbers by promoting job commitments that never came.
By saying they created a job and they didn't, that's fraud. It is a problem. We have to be able to get the truth.
Bauer says he'll be drafting a law that would require IEDC to be more transparent about its job numbers. Right now, the state agency says it cannot back up its job statistics with details because that information is secret.
We don't share it with the public. We don't share it with the news media. That's confidential information.
But other states do release their economic development information to everyone. And economists, policy advisors, and labor leaders are now calling on Indiana to do the same.
They've got to be a lot more transparent.
We need to be founded in reality.
All of it should be public.
That should be made available to the public because the public is paying the bill.
Bauer says the way to accomplish that is with a new law that prohibits secrecy surrounding Indiana's real job numbers.
So that's the kind of information I think the public's entitled to.
But he says historically, Republicans in the state Senate have blocked efforts to mandate more corporate accountability.
We sent it over to the Senate. It's either diluted or killed.
That's a very political statement that I think isn't really a fair assessment of what's going on here.
David Long is the Senate President pro tem.
I'm for openness in government. I just want to be realistic and smart about it as well, so that our number one goal, which is creating good jobs in this state, isn't lost.
If corporate accountability legislation were to come over from the House, is that something that the Senate would be open-minded to?
We'll take a look at it, absolutely. If you're saying what's the harm in being a little more specific with Company A's jobs versus Company B's, you may have an argument there, and we can certainly look at that.
I'll succumb to order.
But if Indiana does pass that kind of law, some fear it could drive away business and jobs.
We got to be careful with what we let the public know because it would hurt our efforts. It hurt the state of Indiana.
Mickey Maurer helped create IEDC as the agency's first president. He says the agency's top priority is attracting jobs, not giving out information. And he believes forcing companies to admit their real job numbers could be bad for business.
If you're running the company and I'm saying that you failed to meet your commitments, folks who deal with that company may come up with an adverse opinion of that company, and that's not what we want to do here in Indiana.
But can the state attract jobs and be honest about job numbers at the same time? It's an issue lawmakers will debate well into the fall, as the idea of a job accountability law becomes a political football. Kerry Hall says to him, this isn't about politics. It's about jobs and about state government not keeping secrets.
I'm not okay with that at all. It's our community that it's affecting. They should be more open and more honest.
More honest job numbers may be coming. At its last board meeting, IEDC announced it will be reassessing its numbers to more accurately reflect how many jobs came and how many fell through. By 13 Investigates count, there are about 40,000 jobs recently promoted by the state that never showed up. I'm Bob Siegel, Channel 13 Eyewitness News.
The door is locked. The jobs, they're all gone. This month, Nationstar Mortgage quietly terminated more than 300 workers at this service center. Shocking news for employees.
You could have heard a pin drop in the room. There was a gal who actually collapsed and fell to the floor sobbing.
Alan asked us to protect his identity because he's still waiting for his severance. He's frustrated. Hundreds of jobs promised here in Indianapolis were just shipped overseas to India.
You go into work every day and you give it your best, and then one day the lights go out and the place sits empty.
As jobs disappear, 13 Investigates has discovered there's a lot more that disappears at the same time, and state leaders know it's happening.
What is IEDC doing here? What happened to those contracts?
It's cooking the books.
Wow, it actually happened.
To understand what's really happening, just look at these deserted factories, empty cornfields, and abandoned warehouses. These are all sites where the state promised thousands of new jobs that don't exist. 13 Investigates exposed state leaders inflated Indiana's official job numbers for years, and then tried to keep the real numbers a secret.
That's confidential information.
After our investigations, Indiana lawmakers passed a new transparency law, and Governor Pence promised more openness.
A transparency portal that will make more information available.
This is the Indiana Economic Development Corporation's new transparency website. It's supposed to show you which companies are creating jobs in exchange for hundreds of millions of state tax dollars. It certainly looks transparent. That is, until you look closely.
You're not getting actual jobs created. You're not getting actual wages paid. You're not even getting the street address of the work site. None of that's here. It's a very, very bare bones disclosure.
Greg Leroy is director of Good Jobs First. The nonpartisan organization tracks economic development policy and transparency, and it's been taking a close look at what IEDC is posting online.
Is this truly transparency?
It's sham transparency. It's primitive in terms of giving you what you need to know about whether you're getting a bang for your taxpayer buck.
And 13 Investigates has discovered hundreds of big projects announced by IEDC do not show up on the transparency portal at all.
They're not there.
Projects like Really Cool Foods.
No records found.
New Sun Solar.
No records found.
Progress Rail.
No records found.
It's as if they've simply disappeared. Actually, many of them have disappeared. IEDC has been erasing contract after contract. More than 160 of them vanished from the website in just the past few months.
What happened to those contracts? Why isn't the public able to see those?
Those contracts are inactive.
The president of IEDC says his agency does not show contracts for projects that fell apart because those companies are no longer getting any tax breaks. He says the agency is not trying to hide anything.
I'm pleased with our efforts in terms of being transparent, and we have a desire to be transparent.
Good Jobs First doesn't buy it.
To hide so-called inactive deals is to rewrite history. It's to act like they never happened. That's gaming the system. It's cooking the books.
That's exactly what happened here. IEDC offered Aurora Loan Services $1.2 million in incentives to create hundreds of new jobs. Nationstar Mortgage took over the company and about a year later laid everybody off, like Alan. Now, if you go to IEDC's new website to look up Nationstar,
no records found.
Or Aurora,
no records found.
You'll find absolutely nothing.
Would you like to know how much money the company actually got?
I would.
Would you like to know how many jobs were actually created?
I would.
Would you like to know why the state is withholding that information?
I really would. I think as a taxpayer, it should be our right to see it.
But IEDC won't let you. And if you don't like that, well, take a look at this. It's IEDC's Job Realization Report. It's supposed to show you how many of the state's announced jobs are now real jobs. IEDC says,
well, our job realization rate is roughly 91%.
91.84 to be exact. That's the number IEDC reported to the legislature, to the governor, and to the public. Just one problem. That number doesn't tell the whole story because it does not include any failed projects like that mortgage company. Or the hundreds of other failed projects IEDC now classifies as non-active. The agency has decided to simply eliminate all unsuccessful projects from its calculations. If those projects are included, IEDC's real job realization rate is not 92%, it's about 64%. Critics say IEDC is just manipulating statistics.
92% means that the state legislature is being led to believe that there's nothing wrong and that everything is working out okay and there's no need for additional scrutiny. So it's really misleading for your lawmakers and for taxpayers.
IEDC is telling you, they're telling the legislature, they're telling the public a number that just isn't statistically possible.
Well, let me say, this is a very difficult time in the life of our economy.
We wanted the governor to know what we found, since he's the one who promised more openness.
As governor, do you believe the numbers that are coming out of IEDC?
Well, let me say, from the outset of our administration, we've made a commitment to transparency.
The governor did not answer my actual question, never saying whether he believes what he's hearing from IEDC. But then again, even IEDC is not willing to defend its job realization rate, which it says is calculated by an outside company.
Do you agree with the number?
Well, it's not for me to agree or disagree with the
Why?
number. The number is the number. I'm going to accept their work at face value.
But should we be taking IEDC at face value?
In economic development, shortfalls happen. It's normal business, but you don't hide it.
Indiana now has a transparency portal, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's getting transparency.
Only the good is reported and the bad is somehow disappearing as though it never occurred.
This week, Good Jobs First published a transparency report card for every state. Because of what we discovered, it decided to lower Indiana's score. You can see that full report right now at wthr.com. We've also posted extended interviews with the governor and with IEDC, so you can see more of how they defend their positions. I'm Bob Siegel, Channel 13 Eyewitness News. At the Indiana State House, agreement does not come easy.
Let's vote for this bill.
Don't fall for it.
It'll increase commerce.
I guarantee you job losses under this proposal.
But after seeing what 13 Investigates exposed about Indiana job numbers,
hundreds of jobs promised here in Indianapolis were just shipped overseas to India.
Wow.
Many Democrats and Republicans are actually saying the same thing.
That would be a problem. That's a real problem. We just need to tell the truth.
They're talking about this. All these deserted office buildings, locked up factories, and abandoned warehouses are sites where the Indiana Economic Development Corporation said there'd be thousands of new jobs. Those jobs disappeared. Many of them never came in the first place. And 13 Investigates discovered IEDC is now erasing all of those failed economic development projects from its new transparency website. And despite all that, the agency is still reporting 92% of Indiana's expected jobs have actually come, when the reality is much different. Across the state, 13 Investigates has discovered more than 400 failed projects like these that IEDC will not include in its calculations. It's no wonder economic development experts say IEDC's job numbers do not add up.
To hide so-called inactive deals is to rewrite history. It's to act like they never happened. That's gaming the system. It's cooking the books. So it's really misleading for your lawmakers and for taxpayers.
Keep in mind, IEDC deals cost taxpayers about $60 million a year. That's why lawmakers say they need to know how those deals turn out.
Because here at the State House, we have to make good decisions. If we're doing well, we need to know why we're doing well. If we're doing poorly, we need to understand what we can do better.
Scott Pilath is the House Minority Leader. He wants IEDC to show the whole picture, both the success stories and the failures.
We just need to tell the truth. What we really need here in Indiana is some entity, whether it be the IEDC or some agency, that gives us an accurate picture, because it's clear we're not going to be able to rely on IEDC to do that. They're just about public relations. They're not about giving us the information we need to make tough decisions.
Democrats say IEDC's new transparency website does not go far enough because IEDC is still holding back so much information. So, is it time for lawmakers to demand more openness?
I think it's fair to raise the question.
Brant Hirschman is the Senate Majority Floor Leader. He believes IEDC transparency is improving, but He says agencies like IEDC cannot constantly change the way they calculate their numbers to reflect only favorable results.
That would be a problem, because if we can't compare apples to apples over a period of time, then it doesn't give us a statistically valid measurement.
Measuring just how many jobs are created and how many of IEDC's promises have come true.
They're not there.
Right now, that's impossible.
It's sham transparency. Lawmakers can't exercise meaningful oversight of a program if they can't see the particulars.
There's something else we want you to see. Even before our investigation aired, IEDC sent top state lawmakers a whole page of talking points to tell them how they should respond to our questions. It's marked confidential, but we want you to see it, so we've posted it at wthr.com. There's now talk from both Republicans and Democrats about introducing a new transparency law, one that would eliminate loopholes IEDC is using to hold back important information. In the meantime, IEDC has refused our request to see hundreds of contracts the agency has already signed. We believe that's a violation of state law. They're public contracts and you have a right to see them. So Eyewitness News has filed a formal complaint with the Indiana Public Access Counselor. We'll keep you posted. I'm Bob Siegel, Channel 13, Eyewitness News.